untold thousands of years, while mankind multiplied and progressed from primitive tribal life to the complex patterns of modern civilization, vast areas of wilderness were etched in rugged mountain peaks, deep valleys, and broad plains, and its voice was the voice of nature which echoed through the forests and mountains. These were the sounds of the wilderness, the voices that had echoed and re-echoed for centuries through the pine-clad valleys of the Canadian Rockies, about 400 miles north of Vancouver. Then, just a few years ago, the mechanical genius of modern man brought a new note to the timbered corridor of Camano Valley. Not the destructive force of a hunter's gun, nor the careless slaughter of fire. It was the cheerful clatter of a helicopter, the vanguard of one of the greatest engineering projects of all time. The rotary wing aircraft carried an aerial surveying crew to chart an unknown country. It was the voice of modern engineering skill, a Bell helicopter, the new sound in the wilderness. Today, a helicopter passenger flying northwest over the same area of British Columbia finds tangible echoes of that first voice. It's reflected in every part of the modern city of Kitimat, in its wide streets and model homes. And the same men who followed the new sound built the churches and schools and parks of Kitimat. They designed its buildings, stores, and shopping centers. They made it a pleasant, attractive community where families can live and grow. A short distance from this quiet city of homes is the modern industrial reason for its existence, the largest aluminum smelter in the world. It would have been an exceptional student of sounds or phonetics who could have divined the word aluminum in the clatter of the Bell helicopter that first came to the wilderness less than a decade ago. But both the word and the promise were there. The project began when, at the invitation of the British Columbian government, the Aluminium Company of Canada dispatched the initial surveying party to photograph and map the terrain of an unknown country. Under a contractual agreement, experienced copter pilot Carl Agar of Okanagan Helicopters Limited assembled the largest fleet of rotary wings ever employed in the civilian enterprise. In a few short months, through aerial photography, they completed a survey that would have taken at least 2 years by any other method. Actual construction of the Kitimat project began with the building of a gigantic dam across the Nechako River to impound the waters of high mountain lakes. Then, a tunnel 10 miles long was driven through the mountain barricade that formed that area's western wall. At Camano, a tremendous powerhouse was carved inside a mountain where colossal turbines were installed to convert the energy of rushing water into electricity. But the power couldn't be used there. Heavy transmission lines were erected across high mountain passes to carry the energy to a smelter at Kitimat. For only the harbor facilities of this seaport, 500 miles northwest of Vancouver, could accommodate the ships bringing bauxite ore from the mines of far-off Jamaica. In the beginning, of course, there were no trails or roads or base camps in the wilderness. Only the throbbing sound of the new voice and its echo across timbered peaks. The first Okanagan pilots landed their helicopters on a barge anchored in the Camano River. But a short time later, Numerous other landing areas were being constructed, square wooden platforms built astride lofty mountain ridges. Self-sufficient rotorcraft transported all the material that made such building possible. Lumber or other construction gear was lashed to the landing skids of each pack-horse helicopter. Thus, like the stepping stones of some prehistoric giant, the wooden squares soon formed a network of access ports to a region that had once served only as a lookout post for lordly mountain sheep. Helicopters also carried the surveying crews who mapped the road to the Kitimat Project's underground powerhouse. Vast amounts of heavy excavation, drilling, and blasting equipment were hauled over the road that had its beginning in a simple traced line on an aerial map. Here, day after day for 21 months, tons of shattered rock were brought to the tunnel's mouth as the giant bore was driven deeper and deeper into the mountain. And countless times during that long period of drilling, blasting, and hauling, the work moved steadily ahead because of helicopter shuttle service. As many as 25 or 30 round trips a day ferried men, supplies, and equipment. Only with such a dependable air link to the main base could the project remain on schedule. Powerhouse was barely completed before winter moved into British Columbia. It was then, in sub-zero weather and against the frigid clutch of Arctic gales, that transmission lines were strung from Camano to Kitimat, 50 miles away. Rugged, weatherproof bells carried workmen, instruments, and parts of steel towers to the highest point on Kildala Pass, 5,300 feet above the ice-locked valley below. When the skeletal towers were finally anchored there, along the ridge of the western world, the largest aerial transmission cable ever made was swung from their steel arms. Meanwhile, and for several months thereafter, another project in mountain transportation was initiated. An aerial tramway raised heavy machinery and construction equipment to the face of adit tunnels high on the mountainside. Material to build the necessary platform stops on the tramway was all transported by helicopter. In fact, the dependable operation of rotary wing aircraft functioned in almost every phase of the Kitimat project. During the long course of completion, as many as 21 construction camps were established throughout the area. And all of these otherwise inaccessible points, located from sea level to an altitude of 7,000 feet, were reached, supplied, and maintained by helicopter service. The cheerful clatter of rotary wings was more than evidence of modern aerial transportation. It was tangible proof to countless construction workers, no matter how remote their base of operations might be, that they were never isolated. In the event of an emergency, the base camp hospital was only minutes away by air. No other major industrial program in modern history can match the engineering know-how and coordinated construction of the Alcan-Kitimat project. Its consummate success, foretold on 100 different drawing boards, is now an accomplished fact. The unlimited power and energy of the Topsa Lake District has been harnessed forever to produce aluminum for every market in the free world. Every day, more than 1 million pounds of aluminum ingots are produced in the Kitimat smelter. Enough metal to provide all of the aluminum needed in 30,000 automobiles or buses, or in 18 huge intercontinental airliners. From the same source comes aluminum for modern locomotives and passenger trains, and for the countless products of modern living. The carefully engineered miracle of Kamano and Kitimat is indeed a far cry from the wilderness in which it grew. Millions of dollars and the collective skills of thousands of men went into its making. And certainly not the least of these were Carl Agar's Okanagan rotary wing pilots and their helicopters. It isn't simple or easy to fly a helicopter in any and all kinds of weather, through tricky mountain passes and powerful thermals, to land on a postage stamp platform. Sometimes the trips were over treacherous canyons, sometimes through the dangerous obscurity of thick and clinging fog. Flying conditions such as these were not the exception. They were the rule at Kamano and Kitimat. Only the operating skill of experienced pilots combined with the superiority of Bell rotary wing aircraft made the airlift possible. For this was wilderness before they arrived, and only the sounds of nature echoed throughout the land. Then the Bell helicopter brought a new note to the forest echoes, a note that heralded man's conquest of natural resources, a note of progress and strength and of pride. It was the sound of change in a world that has been changing since time began. It was indeed a new sound in the wilderness.